A few weeks ago, I traveled to Southern California to visit Joshua Tree National Park, the general Mojave Desert region, and I also took some time to get down to the Salton Sea and the town of Bombay Beach, that bombed out, abandoned mid-century American tourist town by that toxic lake. Such a crazy place, and I've had it like pinned in Google Maps forever. And finally, on this trip, I had a chance to go see it. And it wasn't just me there. My family came with me as well because it was April. The kids were out of school. It was spring break. And it just seemed like an ideal place to go and explore and be out in the desert, climbing some boulders in Joshua Tree, which they just absolutely loved and seemed to really enjoy. So overall, it was just a great trip. The only downside of the trip was that I was unable to shoot any video while I was there for my YouTube channel because, I had limited time. But also because, in case you don't know, national parks in the United States are quite strict when it comes to shooting video. If you're shooting video for yourself, that's no problem. But if you shoot a video and then put that video online, and if that video receives any kind of advertising revenue, even like a lowly YouTube channel like mine, that is considered to be a commercial product, a commercial video. So you have to get a permit, which I'm totally fine with. I don't mind, paying the park and supporting the park. For Joshua Tree, it would have cost me $350 a day in order to shoot video. And then I had to pay for insurance, and then I had to pay an application fee. And we were sending emails back and forth. Anyway, when all was said and done, my final bill was going to be something like $1,000 in order to shoot video inside a Joshua Tree. And I was like, yeah, no thanks, never mind. But anyway, instead of shooting video, one of my goals photographically for this trip was to shoot more film. Because quite honestly, I don't get to use this camera enough. I mean, this camera is really just a beast of a camera. I mean, it is big, it is heavy, it's really like a studio camera. But the images that come out of this camera are fantastic. I shot an entire box of Portra, which includes 5 rolls, so that's 10 exposures per roll. And when I returned back home, and I packaged everything up and I shipped it off to the lab. I use Indy Film Lab in Alabama. They do a great job with film development and scanning. When I shipped everything off, I was really worried and I was really anxious about it. Like, I'm getting like physically anxious right now just thinking about it, because the last time I sent film to a lab, totally different lab, but the last time I did this, the film got lost in the mail. I never saw any of those photos. I don't know to this day whatever happened to any of that film. And then there was the anxiety of just waiting to see if you did everything correctly, like if you loaded the film correctly, if you set your exposure correctly. So I was waiting for that email to hit my inbox, and I was really worried about it. It's like, I don't know, like getting test results from a doctor or something. So I downloaded my scans, then I started going through the images, and I just immediately started feeling so much better, because not only did I not screw anything up, I mean, the film, everything was fine, everything turned out, but also a number of images that I captured actually turned out better than I thought they would. I was breaking the golden rule of landscape and outdoor photography. I was shooting in the middle of the day. No clouds in the sky, bright blue sky overhead, super contrasty. Usually the time of day a landscape photographer would like go take a nap or like, back up some SD cards or something. But creatively speaking, that was actually the kind of light that I wanted. I wanted to capture the feeling of being in that desert landscape when the light is just so intense, when it is so bright, even though it's not as soft and not as, pretty as, other ends of the day. I wasn't really trying to capture pretty images, if that makes sense. Like, I wanted something aesthetically that was a bit harsher. And I also thought it was possible because I was shooting with color negative film, because as you may know, with negative film, you can push it like pretty far. Like, you can push like Portra like 2 stops, 3 stops in order to lift the blacks and the shadows in your shot, and not make the contrast super harsh, to actually show some detail and texture in those dark areas. And you can do that without clipping your whites, unlike a digital camera where if you push it too far, the highlights just blow out and everything turns white. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised, and I think in that situation, film was absolutely the right choice to make. There's just something really beautiful about how Portra captured the blue sky in some of those shots. It just has this nice even tonality to it. Whereas if I'd shot that digitally, it would have turned out rather kind of splotchy and kind of like robin egg blue looking, but it has this nice greenish kind of tint to it, nice cyan in the sky, very even tonality, nice texture and detail in the highlights, not too contrasty. And I was just really pleased with how it turned out. Honestly, it made me want to like get back on a plane and go back with, like 5 more boxes and just do even more. Which brings me to the topic of this video, and the reason why I'm producing this and sharing this with you is because ever since I returned home, and I've been going through all the film images and the digital images that I captured while there, I've been having a kind of existential, like photographer's existential crisis when it comes to photography gear, when it comes to the cameras that I own and use. As much as I like full frame, I've never been particularly crazy about the 3:2 aspect ratio. I always seem to crop it. Like I always crop it to like 4:3 or 4:5 or sometimes square, maybe 5:7, something like that. Especially vertical full frame, way too tall. Like I always have to, scrunch it down a little bit. And the problem with cropping, of course, is that doing so removes megapixels. It removes data from the image. So that 3:2 45 megapixel image from the Canon EOS R5, after I inevitably crop it thereafter, ends up being more like, 35 or 30 or 25. There's actually an image that I have that I very aggressively cropped because it just felt like the right thing to do creatively. And I just like it so much more cropped in the way that I cropped it. Well, that image ended up turning out to be like a 15 megapixel image or something. I mean, it's quite small. I couldn't make a print of it. It's fine for Instagram and like a website, that kind of stuff, but not the kind of thing that I could really do much else with, unfortunately. Let's illustrate this to make a better comparison. This is the Fuji GFX 100S, 100 megapixels, 4:3 aspect ratio, 11648 by 8736. And then this is the resolution of the GFX 50. And what's interesting is that even though the 100S has twice the megapixels of the 50, it's not double the resolution. It's actually only about 40% larger. That's not a bad thing. It's just how math, it's just how math works. And then this is the full frame 45 megapixel 3:2 aspect ratio resolution of the Canon EOS R5. And as you can see, compared to the GFX 50, it's more or less exactly the same. But a more practical comparison for me would be comparing a cropped image from the Canon EOS R5, cropping that full frame 3:2 image to 4:3, which is the native sensor resolution of the Fuji GFX cameras. And in that comparison, images from the R5 cropped to 4:3 are about 13% smaller compared to the GFX 50, which it appeared to be quite similar to before, and is obviously quite a bit smaller compared to the GFX 100. And so it's becoming really clear to me here that if I want to emulate the look of 6:7 medium format film from my Mamiya, get a similar aspect ratio with minimal cropping, and have the flexibility to crop into an image creatively as I want to, well, there really is no other option out there as good, it seems to me, as the Fuji GFX cameras. Fuji's actually running a sale right now on the new GFX 100S. They knocked a few $100s off of it. It's like $5,500 right now, which says to me that perhaps there's a new model coming out and they're clearing out some inventory. I don't know. Fuji, GFX 50R, was $4,500 when it first came out 5 years ago, and you can currently pick one up for about $2,400. But of course, the downside of the GFX, at least to me, is the fact that it would almost be like a wholesale replacement of what I currently have, because I don't really want like 2 different camera systems, 2 different, lenses, especially when traveling. And I also like traveling with backup cameras because I destroyed a Canon 5D Mark IV one time in Iceland, and I did not have a backup camera. And ever since that trip, I travel with some kind of backup. So it's almost like switching camera systems would require buying 2 GFX cameras, which that's where I'm at. That's why I'm making this video, because it just feels like a really weird place right now when it comes to what's happening with Canon, what their future holds. What do you think? Are you a GFX user? Do you have some thoughts about it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Are you a Canon user? Are you holding out for a higher resolution model like I am? What do you think? Just let me know. Leave a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.